In this session, we're going to look at two issues that at some time affect the parent of every teenager: communication and conflict. Let me say a few words about communication first. Do you know, wherever I speak in the world and in whatever culture, and parents share their heart with me about the traumas they're going through with their teenagers, time and time again it's the subject of communication that comes up. I think now of a mum who said to me, she said, my 14-year-old son has developed the word nothing into an art form. I ask him, what do you do at school today? And he says, nothing. I say, what are you going to do tonight? And he says, nothing. He has friends around and I say, what did you talk about? And he says, nothing much. She says, I'm tempted when he next asks me, what are we having for tea, Mum? To say, nothing. But it's not easy, is it? One minute they can be all sweetness and light with us, and the next we say a wrong word and they'll bite our heads off. And of course, sometimes we don't much feel like communicating with them, do we? One mum said to me, sometimes I just don't want to talk to him. He's so rude to me. And I said, you know, I'm sorry about that, and it's probably not personal, and there's certainly no reason why you should let him go on being rude to you. But I think we need to understand as parents that our communication with our teenagers is different to our communication with almost everybody else. For example, with our friends or a husband and wife, we probably want to win every argument, but we probably shouldn't try and win every argument with our teenager. We should let them win a few. You see, we are part of the great experiment with words. They're trying out things on us that they can't try with anybody else. And we want them to build up that confidence. Sure, we want them to respect us, but we want them to learn to fight their own corner as well. It'd be great if they kept to our opinions, but we want them to form their own opinions as well. We're almost being guinea pigs. One 15-year-old girl wrote to me and said, if I spoke to my teachers, my Saturday boss and my friends like I sometimes speak to my mum and dad, I'd be out of a job, I'd be excluded from school, and I wouldn't have a friend in the world. And it can be galling, can't it? When we meet our best friend in the supermarket and they said, it was great having your Charlie over for tea yesterday. What a talker that boy is. He told me about his schoolwork, he told me about his love life, great plans he's got for when he leaves school. And we have two emotions, don't we? First, pride, but also hard on its heels, frustration. I wish he talked to me like that. And you know, so often when they do want to communicate, it's at such an inconvenient time, isn't it? We're in the middle of that difficult email, we're trying to get the tea, or worse still, it's about 1:45 and they amble nonchalantly into our bedroom, flop on the end of the bed and start sharing their heart with us. It is inconvenient, but if possible, even those moments we need to grasp. You know, one mum said to me, she said, it was about 5:15 and I was getting the tea ready and suddenly my 15-year-old boy came into the kitchen. She said that was a bit unusual and he looked a bit awkward. And suddenly he blurted out, Mum, I think I might be gay. And she said, I'm getting the tea and I think I've got 10 seconds to respond. But she said, I also know that he will remember what I say next for the rest of his life. She said, I didn't hesitate. I turned the cooker down, we sat at the table and talked for an hour. You know, largely our teenagers will want to share their difficult times with us. It might be a bit more difficult with that child who finds it a bit harder to express themselves, and we might have to try harder there. But it will help if we share a little of our failure with them. Even share with them what we went through as teenagers. They'll be staggered that we face some of the same pressures that they're going through now. You know, communication is not easy, and it is often inconvenient. But grasp those moments when they come. It really can make all the difference.
Some things, not everything. You couldn't tell your parents everything.
I could.
Not everything.
My mum. I talk to my mum about everything.
I can basically talk to my dad about anything.
Well, I talk to my dad openly about anything, sex, anything.
Some people are really close with their parents. They'll speak to them about like nights out, what you've been up to, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because it's just embarrassing.
I don't really like talking to my parents about things that are private to them. But I like talking to my friends because I feel like they're good to listen. There is some stuff that I wouldn't want to tell them, like only my friends I'd want to tell.
Boy stuff. Yeah, it's the same.
Girls.
Yeah, same type thing.
Yeah.
6, probably, because that's just kind of like a weird subject, really.
For like a bit of social media that I really discuss with my parents, like, 'cause they don't really understand it. It's what we've grown up with and what it is.
Yeah. I find everyone has a few things they can't talk to their parents about.
There's just some things that you need to keep to yourself sometimes.
But that's just a bit of privacy everyone's entitled to.
I'm really close with my parents, so I could tell them anything.
That makes me seem bad.
Do we have to do this every time we ask him to clean his room?
Let's just get it over with. I think it went quite well.
I do find it hard to talk to my teenagers, especially my eldest son. He usually just nods his head when I ask him, or says no, or texts me if he really wants to speak to me, but we don't talk now. I would love to, but we don't. No.
At this age, I don't talk to my parents as much as I used to. Obviously, as a child, like when I was like as young as these, I think, yeah, they would have to know everything I'm doing. But I think now, I think it's my decision, everything I do, so.
I don't think I've changed that much. I never really told them about crushes or anything.
There's always a little bit of a barrier sometimes when you're wanting to have a discussion about something and it's almost as if, here we go again, we've had this conversation 100 times, Mum.
I do talk to my parents quite a lot. I mean, I talk to them, both of them on a daily basis, so even when I go away just for the night.
I feel more comfortable. Like if I had a problem, I'd go to them now, but I never used to want to do that when I was younger.
It's easier to talk to them now, they get it more.
I find taking them in a car journey, picking up a hot chocolate from McDonald's and going and have a good little drive around and tears, and they come out with their problems, and that's another really good time of communication for me.
We've always had a really good relationship, and we've always been able to talk openly.
I don't find any sort of topic sort of taboo, anything that they want to bring up or I feel I need to bring up with them.
I think I talk to my parents a lot more now than when I was younger because I've matured a lot.
When we do have conversations, they're a lot more in depth and they're a lot more intelligent, just because it's maybe not necessarily quantity but more quality in the sense.
I'm sure there are. Yeah. And
I don't blame them for that, because
No.
I was like that when I was young, growing up. I wouldn't,
But not in a way that they're trying to hide it. I just think that's a natural part of discovering who you are. I think a lot of it is about keeping the door open.
There hits points where I just don't want to talk to anyone, or I just want to be left alone for a while, and sometimes I'm stressed and I just don't want to speak to anyone.
Some things I just want to keep to myself. Like, I don't want to tell anyone, and especially my parents, about some things.
There are things that they find that I feel that they probably wouldn't talk to me about, and I'm constantly checking myself. I do find that hard personally.
Well, yeah, as a guy, I suppose, it's just natural to keep certain things, from your mum.
I have tried in the past to talk about the more intimate things about relationships and with Josh, and that has just been I don't need to talk to you about that, Mum. I'm not having this conversation. Get up and walk out of the room.
Oh yeah, things like I wouldn't come home and tell my mum I'm talking to this girl and stuff like that. Like, that's something you talk to your friends about.
But I'm hopeful if he really needed to, that he would.
I don't think there's a teenager alive hasn't sort of given headlines or missed bits out, or certainly edited their nights out or their weekends or whatever. So there's that.
I don't think they hide too much from me. Sometimes they're a bit nervous at Peter's answer. So they say, oh, don't tell Dad. It's because they're just afraid of how we react, I suppose. It's like a dad thing, isn't it?
I think there's like some things, but I tell my mum most things, but I don't really tell my dad. But then there is like some things like to do with like boys and that, like I wouldn't tell my mum that, but that's about it.
Yeah, I talk to my friends about more things than I would to my parents.
There's your friends that, you know, they won't really put so much pressure on you.
Yeah, and I feel when talking to your friends, you can say anything and not really be judged that harshly. A lot of the time they'll be going through the same thing.
There has been times when he's maybe not felt completely comfortable to be able to speak to me and maybe sounded out my sister, his auntie, before he came to speak to me about something. So I know that he has done that. And it's good that he's got the opportunity to speak to somebody else out with the family. So I'm happy with that.
If I was, I don't know, I'm in an argument with my boyfriend or something, I'd probably speak to my friend, because normally they just agree with you anyway, so it makes you feel better.
I would talk to Johnny about things, like literally.
And I would pretend to listen.
We disagree about a few things. It's not so much that we argue. We don't really ever properly argue. Just I'll do something and then my dad might not be happy about it.
There's a lot more arguing going on, and at times I do feel very stressed with how to deal with it.
We rarely argue anymore. That's one thing I've noticed. The only times we'll argue is if she's really stressed.
It's the trivial things like, what time do I need to be home, Dad? Well, you need to be home at 9 o'clock. Can't we make it 10? Well, no, we can't make it 10. We'll make it 9.
Irrelevant things. Sometimes I just get moody, which causes them to be upset.
We disagree with her about how long it takes her to get ready, no?
Sometimes with my dad is about what I wear when I go out.
Length of skirt.
Yeah. His mobile phone, it's the time he spends on the internet, time he spends watching television, the time he doesn't spend studying.
Yeah, I disagree with my parents sometimes, just like when I've come home from working and they don't believe me that I've actually been doing some work and they have a go at me for not doing it.
Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to why they'll suddenly get really angsty or cross with each other, or just, really rip into each other.
Will might just be talking in some kind of tone and it'll just start getting on my nerves. We just know how to push each other's buttons and make everything a lot worse.
What I'm pleased about is they've pretty much got have got a well-developed sense of morality.
The way that they treat one another and the way that they treat other people, we've always really taken a strong line on that.
I think we're quite keen on them being upright morally and legally, and to show respect to the wider community and themselves.
He's not allowed a girlfriend before the age of 18. I know he laughs at it, but he's not. I've told him if I see you with a girl in town before the age of 18, I'll embarrass you. So they know not to do that. Yep.
I don't think she's ready to be going out with boys yet, so that's another stand. But again, it's not something that it's not a boundary she's been testing.
If they do swear in any environment, which happens, I tell them straight, I don't like it.
Okay, Mum is strict about nothing. She's very soft, very easygoing, I suppose.
They're such good kids, and they sort of naturally know, Mum, I know that's not good, and they've got very sensitive, strong consciences, so I don't feel like I need to take some very strict stands with them, really.
We've got much more of a two-way dialogue going on. In the past, it used to be like, no, we're not doing this. And you'd be like, they might be a bit, but, they're going, right, okay, and accept it. Now, you're getting back a really good response that you think, actually, that's really thought through. And it has made me think, And
negotiation skills have come on leaps and bounds.
Oh, yeah, negotiation's amazing.
Teenagers.
Why can't we? And reminding us of past conversations, past failings. It's a much more two-way street on it. Yeah.
There are certain things that I don't like him watching on television that I think I definitely say we're not having that on and we don't watch that. You can switch that off. and also about communicating. So if he's going out at night or anything like that, I need to know where he is, when he's coming home, who he's with. Those are the things I think I'm the most strict with.
Make him hoover, that's a great one. I love him doing that, because he really goes off on one when that. He hates that. But it's good for him. It's good therapy.
We've really noticed a difference since my daughter's become a teenager. It's got harder to talk to her about the difficult subjects, such as when we believe her behaviour is not acceptable or she's crossed a boundary line. And on one particular occasion, I can remember when we wanted to deal with one issue, which we considered to be quite serious. She just would not want to be in the room. She did not want to talk to us face to face. And in fact, we ended up speaking to her while she was under her duvet, sitting in our lounge chair. Effectively, I was talking to a duvet for 30 minutes with my cup of coffee. And even then, we never really knew whether she was listening or not, but we just hoped that she was. One major observation that I've had of having a teenager is that they suddenly grow a pair of headphones. And these headphones kind of communicate to me. They kind of say to me, "Dad, I can switch you off at any time I like." And these headphones kind of accompany her everywhere. And I always feel that there's that sort of threat to me. At any time I can just cut you off, Dad. My daughter has become more opinionated as she's got older, and she's become stronger in her views, and she's trying to find her way in the world and her thoughts on things. So she asks more profound and deeper questions, but of course then also she disagrees with us on some things. She has opinions about what she wants to wear, what she wants to watch. For example, she loves the programme I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. My wife and I decided we'd try and watch it with her to kind of keep her company. I lasted 15 minutes, I couldn't take it any longer. However, what we have found with her is that there'll suddenly be moments, and it'll be a moment in the car, or a moment just as we're walking in the door, or when you're just walking into a shop, and suddenly she will start chatting and talking and opening up and sharing her thoughts, feelings, opinions. And so we just found, really, as she's got older, you kind of get these moments that suddenly come out of nowhere, and if you're not careful, they're gone before you realised it, and you can't get them back.
In this session, we're looking at communication and conflict, and it's great to be joined by Wendy Jones and Philip Gennady.
Hello.
We just heard that dad talking about the problems he had in communicating with his teenage daughters. Is that something, Philip, that you found difficult when your girls became teenagers?
Well, it's quite spooky listening to that story, because it was almost like he was describing my life. So many of the things that he talks about I've experienced and continue to experience. And I think the issues that come up are things that are general to many parents of teenagers.
Wendy, in your experience as a counsellor, is that something that you've come across?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes both ways. So the teenagers are often bemused, but they can't communicate with the parents, as well as the parents not being able to communicate with the teenagers. And that's perfectly normal. It's part of normal development. Okay, but in some cases we get more extreme cases where the communication between parents and young people has completely broken down. If parents are finding that they are out of control, then they need to go and ask for help elsewhere. And that will vary from region to region. So maybe the first port of call will be your GP, who will be able to direct you to the right services, or if you've got youth workers in your area as well.
And so for some parents, these teenage years really are a tough time.
They feel at their wit's end. They don't know how to cope. They don't know what to do or where to turn.
And what about when it feels like they don't want to talk at all? Because I think for a lot of parents, actually the grunt is, the most that they get out of their teenagers. What about that, Wendy?
I think if you push, sometimes that's the worst thing you can do. It's about getting alongside. And if they are angry, then the worst thing you can do is actually push for the conversation there and then. You need to let them let their rage out and calm down before you try and have that conversation.
So Philip, what's it been like for you communicating with your girls throughout the teenage years?
Well, it has its ups and downs. I think the key is keeping the lines of communication open at all times. I remember one time a couple of years ago with my eldest where I found myself outside her door. She'd run into it, she was avoiding us, she'd slammed the door. I was outside thinking I could break the door down or I could give up on this, but how can I keep the conversation going? And in that particular incident, I got my phone out and I said, listen, I need to be able to see you. I can't see you through the door. So I passed my phone under. She took a picture of herself. And then I got the phone back, I took a picture of myself. And we ended up having this kind of bizarre, surreal conversation via photos on a phone until finally it ended up with her opening the door and a bit of a hug and then a bit of a debrief. But what you sometimes have to do is you just have to sometimes be creative. You have to not rise to the bait when you feel like just getting really angry and reacting, and doing all that you can to keep the conversation going.
And so that's a great story. I think what you've done, you've kept that connection, you've kept lines of communication open.
Actually, in that instance, we didn't fully resolve the issue then because actually it wasn't the right time. You have to pick your moments sometimes to go into these more emotive topics, and so for us it was just about let's keep talking and the next day let's talk further through with this issue.
And so Wendy, are there ways that parents and teenagers can learn to communicate better?
Yeah, the strange thing is that often teenagers think that their parents aren't interested in what they've got to say, and the parents think their teenagers aren't interested in talking to them. So that block can come from both sides. So it's important to have patterns of communication where you spend time together talking and keeping those channels open. So sometimes I encourage teenagers to invite their parents out for coffee so that they have time away from the home without all the distractions.
That's really interesting because I know as a parent, often my experience has been that I've assumed that the teenagers don't want to listen to me and then not made that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's being alive to the times when they do want to speak, because when they're little, you can just sit them down and say, right, tell me about your day, and it'll all come out. But with teenagers, it's being able to see when do they want to talk and how do they want to talk. We've got into a bit of a pattern where on family film nights, we'd go and have a little tradition of walking down with my eldest to the corner shop, picking up some marshmallows, some treats to have with the film. And I noticed that that's when she would talk. A couple of weeks later, I was in my office and she came in and she said, Dad, would you like to go down to the corner shop? And my immediate reaction was, no, I don't. I've got stuff to do. And why would I want to go to the corner shop? We don't need anything. And suddenly twigging, actually, she wants to talk. This is our little shorthand, our code for Dad, I'm happy to talk and this is my moment. And actually what you need to do is you need to be able to key into when does your teenager want to communicate, how do they do that, and roll with it. And so I've learnt now, whenever my daughter says corner shop, I go, I drop everything, and that's when she wants to talk.
Well, at Care for the Family, we talk about different styles of parenting, and we talk about the fact that there are 3 different styles, essentially. First of all, there's the authoritarian parent, which is super, super strict, loads of rules, they're all really enforced. Then the other end of the spectrum is the permissive parent. Permissive parent doesn't have any rules at all, anything goes, kids can do what they like. And then in the middle is the assertive parent. The assertive parent has as few rules as possible, says yes to as many things as possible, but the things that they say no to are carefully chosen, and those things are enforced and followed through. So Wendy, how does that feel in your experience for parents but also for teenagers, comparing those different styles?
Okay, what I find is that where you have authoritarian parenting, you have lots of conflict because you're always coming up against each other. The rules are always being challenged and having to be pulled back into line. Okay. At the other end, where you've got permissive parenting, some young people, some teenagers can feel that their parents don't care because there are no boundaries and they will keep on pushing. And then the middle parenting style, the assertive parenting style, okay, that has the best response in terms of conflict because the boundaries are negotiated and they're understood and the reasons behind them are understood.
So Philip, in terms of setting boundaries, how do we go about setting boundaries with our teenagers?
I think when they become teenagers, it becomes more of a challenge, because no longer do they just go along with what you say because I say so. Now they want to know why. Why are you saying this thing? Why is this boundary in place? Or why have you reacted like this? Why have you made this particular judgment call? And in all honesty, on some occasions I've had to say, gosh, thinking about it, perhaps I did react a little bit strongly, and I've had to go back to my girls and say, actually, yeah, you're right, I got that one wrong. But there are other occasions where they'll challenge me on something, they'll push back on a boundary, and then it's my job to be able to give a good reason that makes sense to them, so that it's not arbitrary. And to be able to say, well, this is the reason, you know, these are the consequences this is how it affects me, or this is how it affects us as a family, and this is what your behaviour does. So to be able to lay out before them what the consequences are of their actions, why the boundary is in place, and being able to get them on board. So do you see why we would like to do it this way, and get them fully engaged in the process?
I think that's really important, isn't it? Making it much more a two-way process, but allowing them, I think, the responsibility and to have an input.
You want them to develop. The ultimate aim is they become adults, individuals that can stand on their own 2 feet and make good choices. So when you're not there, they've already got an internal mechanism for how to come to decisions, how to weigh up consequences, and how to make their own way.
And actually, they're teenagers, boundaries are there to be tested, and there are going to be times, aren't there, when they cross them. So Wendy, how important are consequences to boundaries?
Consequences are really important. You need them, and you need to make sure that when a boundary has been crossed, you actually do something about it.
I remember on one occasion when we were away for the weekend, and one of our children was going to be at home alone, and we had said to him that he wasn't to have a party in the house. Well, we came back after the weekend to find loads of complaints from all the neighbours, and he hadn't had a party in the house, but he had had a very large party in the garden. And the consequence that we had set down for that was one that actually was really inconvenient for all of us. It was New Year, we grounded him, and we said he couldn't be at home on his own. So it messed up the whole of New Year, not just for him, but for the whole family as well.
Absolutely, and that's the key, to be prepared to follow through on a consequence that you've laid down, even though it's going to impact on you and be inconvenient for you. Because what you're doing is you're teaching your teenager that actions have consequences.
And if we're parenting together, so important that we are at one on those things, that we're united on that. But it can be challenging, particularly, I think, if we're co-parenting, if we're not in the same home and the teenagers are dividing their time between the 2 homes during the week, or if we're parenting on our own.
Yeah, teenagers are very quick to know that they can play one parent off against each other. So where you are co-parenting, it's really important to make sure that you're communicating and checking out and making sure that your agreed boundaries are being kept.
And I guess it's hard for teenagers as well if there's one rule in one home and one in the other.
Although they very quickly learn that, so they will adapt to that quite quickly, as long as you're consistent with your own rules.
And what about for people that are parenting on their own?
I mean, that is a big challenge, and often people who are parenting on their own feel that if there is conflict, they've failed. Okay, but actually conflict in the home is normal, so it's important to keep talking to friends and family and checking out that actually you're doing okay.
So Wendy, out of all the things we've talked about, what would be your one top tip to give to parents of teenagers?
I would say don't have too many rules and pick your battles.
And Philip, what for you? What would be your one top tip?
I'd say try not to react in the heat of the moment. Sometimes you just need to pause before you respond.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's been really fantastic to have you with us. Thank you.
In this session, we've been looking at the issue of communication and conflict. And those can be particularly hard if we've got a testing teenager. But you know, sometimes with a testing teenager, we only look at the negatives, and And occasionally we need to take a second look. When they're 14, the tick boxes are easy. We want their bedrooms to be tidy, we want them not to smoke, we want them to get their homework in on time. But that won't be enough for us when they're 35. If when they're 35 they get their reports in on time for their boss, their bedroom's tidy, they don't smoke, but they're proud and arrogant and rude and they don't care for others and they can't make a friend, that won't be enough for us then. We want them to be generous and open-hearted. And the fascinating thing is the testing teenager often has those lovely qualities, but we forget to commend them for it. We're so busy picking out the negatives, perhaps sometimes looking over our shoulder, wondering what other people are making of our parenting. We forget to do what every parent should do to catch them doing something right. And you know, when they only hear the negatives, it can be wearing. When the ear never hears praise, the heart loses the will to try. Catch them doing something right. But whether our teenager is compliant or testing, you and I cannot fight every battle. We can fight the don't use your mobile at the tea table battle. We can fight the you can't watch too much television battle. We can fight the homework battle and the untidy bedroom battle and the smoking battle and the come home on time battle. But we can't fight every battle. Because if we do, two things will happen. First, our teenager will say, my mum and dad are always on my back. And secondly, and far worse, they'll never know when something really matters to us. We have to choose our battles. You know, sometimes it's as if our teenager's on a high wire in a circus. They're age 13 and they're trying to get through to age 21. And actually, they're doing pretty well. But mum and dad are underneath shouting up, tuck your shirt and comb your hair, and suddenly they start to wobble. Because nobody can get everything right in life. And our task as their mum and their dad is to help negotiate them through those most important ones. But you know, wherever there is communication and wherever there is conflict, you and I will get dealing with those two things wrong sometimes. And so even as a mum, even as a dad, sometimes we have to go to our teenager and say, I'm sorry, I got that one wrong. Please forgive me. And when we do that, we model something wonderful. It is simply this, that there will always be conflict, that human beings will get it wrong. But by words and actions, we say to them, the most important thing is not that you and I had a bit of a row, not that there was conflict. The most important thing is we come through it together, because the most important thing is our relationship.